Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're headed into our final segment of the day. Going to be talking a little bit of baseball here because we saw a very interesting series of events unfold for the New York Mets coming off of this very brutal season up to this point. And we saw yesterday Jorge López, out of frustration for his own play and obviously the team success as a whole up to this point, sort of toss his glove up in the air. It goes over the netting and lands in the crowd. Now, from a fan perspective, fan took a picture with the glove and she seemed perfectly okay with it. But then after the game, there was an interview with Lopez where he made some comments that are sort of being left up to interpretation. Now, the act of throwing the glove into the stands, although it wasn't hostile and the fans seemed to have no problem with it whatsoever, that is definitely a level of conduct that I'm sure the Mets don't appreciate anyways. But it gets more interesting from there, where Lopez was asked about the incident, and again, a little bit of a communication error, it seems like, between Lopez and the media, where you can sort of be the judge of it, because I don't know if we necessarily have a definitive answer on it, where he was asked about the situation, and what it sounded like, at least to me initially, was that he said he is on the worst team in the effing MLB, and he was asked to clarify if that's what he meant, and he did double down on it and say yes. Now, that quote of, I'm on the worst team and such, I think I've been on the worst team in probably the whole effing MLB. That is the quote that really started circulating around social media. And for the Mets and Steve Cohen, obviously the owner, who is very obviously, in tune with social media, he and the organization sees this, and they decided to designate Jorge Lopez for assignment just like that. There was really no second thought to it. Now, since then, there has been a little bit of a correction. We don't have anything definitive still here at this point, but Lopez, English is not his first language. He grew up in Puerto Rico, and I'm sure that he spoke English for a lot of his life, but it's not his first language. And there is, when he says worst team, there is a little bit of a pause that seems like it could have been the start of him saying teammate. Now, again, it's a lot up to interpretation, and the fact that it sounds like he did sort of double down on this idea a couple times. He was even specifically asked, talking about the team itself, that's what you're saying the worst is the league? And he said he feels like probably a little bit of both, that he's the worst teammate on the worst team. So definitely let me know how you feel in the comments section. I know it's a little bit confusing. We don't have rights to the audio here on the show, but definitely give it a look, because again, when I first saw this, I saw it with the sort of typical ESPN quote graphic of saying the worst team, and I listened to it, and sort of confirmation bias, that's what I heard. But I can see the argument for both sides as well. And again, it's just sort of a messy situation as a whole. But regardless, the damage is done. And again, the fact that he threw the glove into the crowd is probably, good enough justification for the Mets to move on from him. But let me know if you feel that he was sort of wrongly framed in this situation. But regardless, for the Mets, it has been a pretty rough season for them, where just a couple years ago, they were winning 100 plus games. It was 101 to be specific. They get bounced early in the postseason then, and they just have not been the same team since then. And they have a lot of the same offensive contributors in Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Francisco Lindor, Starling Marte, but none of them are having the same statistical seasons. And as a result, we've seen the Mets really be struggling since April 21st. They have the worst record in the MLB at 10-25. They entered May with a winning record, but they now sit here, in these last couple days of the month, and they are 22-33 and are likely not, coming up anytime in the near future. So it's been a really rough stretch for the Mets, and you have to sort of consider the big picture with them, understanding you have a very expensive contract in Lindor for the near future. If you were going to move on from him, you are not going to get much in return there. Then there's the Pete Alonso question, where Alonso isn't playing bad necessarily, but at the same time, batting average is way down. He's still on pace for 35, 36 home runs. So it's a tough conversation as he approaches free agency. He's going to want a lot of money. The Mets are going to want to try and probably keep their fans happy to some degree. Is that going to be giving out this long-term extension to Pete Alonso? I'm not sure. It is kind of a tough situation there, as we have a comment. A burst of frustration. Lopez needed to stay professional, but losing is never fun, so throwing the glove into the crowd is crazy, but hey, at least it wasn't a bat. Absolutely. And again, it was kind of harmless in the end. The fans were taking pictures with the glove. If you are in that section, probably feeling like it was an extremely memorable moment, obviously not in a fun way after a 10-3 loss ultimately. And it's been sort of getting their teeth kicked in a little bit this series against the Dodgers. But yeah, ultimately it's tough. Lopez, very emotionally charged person, you could say, and this is somebody with a lot of talent, was just an all-star a couple years ago in 2022. It wasn't for the Mets at that point, but definitely needs to stay composed in that moment. It is pretty hard to, defend. Like I said, it ultimately didn't result in anything all too significant, but at the same time, it could have, and there really just isn't a precedent for, getting away with that type of thing. And especially, I think that the Mets probably, to some degree, use Lopez as a little bit of a scapegoat to, DFA him and sort of put the attention on him, as opposed to the fact that, like I mentioned, the team is absolutely struggling right now. Specifically, I think 10-25 since that date that I mentioned of April 21st. So it's been really rough, obviously, and Mets fans don't need to be reminded of that. But we are just sort of seeing the dysfunction of this organization coming to life right now in a very emphatic way. And I'm not totally sure there is a great fix for the Mets moving forward. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments section. That is all we have time for today. Did want to sort of throw in some MLB at the end of the show today, though, because I'm going to be joining Sam Menzie on the GSMC Baseball Podcast later this afternoon in just about 20 minutes. We have a variety of different shows here at the GSMC Sports Network, and myself, Garrison, and Jeremy Lapidus are all going to be joining Sam on his show in just under half an hour. So definitely be sure to tune into that, and we'll be going over all types of baseball headlines, probably this to a little bit of a larger extent as well. I want to get their thoughts and whether or not they thought this Lopez situation was a language barrier type of thing, or if he was justifiably sort of released in this situation. But that is all we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Remember to like, follow, subscribe. Check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be joining Sam Menzie on the Baseball Podcast in 20 minutes, so tune into that. But As for this show, we will be back tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So we will see you then. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.